Hi, I'm Don. Today we're painting a warhammer model, and of course we're using my red grass wet palette and some Vallejo colors. Also, we're talking about the color wheel, or at least purple, why I think it's the best shadow color for your miniatures. Purple may be the best underpainting or shadow color for organic stuff, but it's not the ultimate shadow color. Also, this video is dedicated about the stippling method, that you could paint almost anything with the stippling method, and of course we're going to come up with a golden lemon standard painting of the skin and the red robe. So join me as we paint this model in this 20-minute workshop format video, which is kinda long. Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my studio. This channel is supported by all these awesome brands. This video is inspired by Duke Painting. I'll put the link of his YouTube channel below. Now let's paint. By the way, I highly recommend you get an oil painting brush. They're very durable, they're easy to clean, and they're perfect for dry brushing. First, we paint the shadow color with Chalice Red from the Vallejo Nocturna set. So why is purple or violet the best shadow color for organic stuff? Let's talk about the color wheel. Basically, the color wheel, you have yellow, red, and blue as your primary colors. And amongst those primary colors, only blue is the cool color, and yellow and red are both warm colors. So blue, being the only cool color among the primary colors, is the ultimate shadow color if you add a bit of black. Our human brain is wired that when we look at blue or cool colors, we tend to relax, and those colors kinda recede to the background. Unlike warm colors, yellows and reds, those colors tend to jump towards us and they really pop. However, blue will only be the best shadow color if you add a bit of black to blue. I mean, if you use dark blue. Purple, on the other hand, is naturally darker than blue. So, since red is the darkest among all of the primary colors, it's darker than yellow and blue, and if you combine red and blue, it becomes a very dark purple or violet color. Thus, it's the best shadow color for organic materials or organic stuff like skin and cloth, or anything you want to look a bit more warm. You could use purple as your shadow color. Some people actually consider green and purple or violet they are warm colors for some people, but personally I feel they're technically in between cool and warm, because you're mixing blue with red to create violet, and you're mixing blue and yellow to create green. So they're basically warm and cool at the same time. But for me personally, green and purple are kind of cooler than warmer. Purple is the best shadow color in my opinion, because red is the darkest among all of the primary colors, and also it gives a warm tint or a warm look to your model if you use purple as the base color or the shadow color. So purple or violet, being both cool and warm, it kind of recedes at the same time because it's a mixture. It has a blue tint to it, but it's also warm at the same time because there is a red tint to it. So it's the best shadow color for all your painting needs, especially if you're painting skin or any organic stuff. Now we paint the red robe. I'm using Gory Red, which is a dark red color, but during the latter part of painting this color, I was tempted to use dark vermilion instead. However, Dark vermilion has an orange tint to it, and I don't want that look. I want a pink highlight for the red robe because I'm going for a malefic look. So I decided against it. Painting red, especially over black primer, or basically just painting red even over cenital underpainting, is kind of frustrating yet satisfying at the same time. We all know that yellows and reds are kinda semi-transparent regardless of brand, even if you use Golden, Citadel, or whatever good brands that you have. Oh, I can't imagine if you're using cheapo brands, but basically yellows and reds are semi-transparent, thus they're kinda tricky to paint with. Yellows and reds benefit so much with good underpainting. Like this one, we're painting gory red over a purple underpainting or a shadow color. Thus, we're creating nice volume already even in the first coat. But now we're painting the second coat and eventually we're painting the third coat. But you'll notice in the painting that as I paint the second coat, I'm painting a lesser or a smaller area than the first coat. And then eventually in the third coat, I'm painting a lesser area again, creating a zenithal effect because I'm painting mostly the top areas of the robe. So this is the perfect way of how to paint red and yellow paints. You basically paint less and less areas as you paint the succeeding coats. Thus you create more volume. You'll notice in this video that by the third coat, I'm practically just painting the highlight areas or the pre-highlight areas of the robe or the cloth or the clothes of this model. So we maximize the transparency of the gory red by painting less and less areas and create a zenithal effect as we paint more succeeding layers. Also, it is important to note that we have a purple underpainting or undercoat or shadow color underneath the gory red. And since we're painting less and less areas of gory red as we paint succeeding layers, you'll notice by the end of painting the third coat, we have a very nice volume with good color depth. Thus, I said that painting red can be frustrating and yet satisfying at the same time if you know how to maximize the transparency of the paint. Now we use reddish skin. This color is actually our base color for our skin tone. Oh, by the way, long-time subscribers know that I kinda like exaggerating the painting of the model. Like for example with this one, exaggerating or like dedicating the painting of the skin and the robe via stippling. Basically, the best way to paint a miniature is like doing various techniques as you paint the miniature, like do a bit of wet blending on the robe and then do stippling for the highlights, do a bit of glazes for the shadows and stuff like that. Basically, that's the best way to paint a miniature, is to combine all the basic techniques into one miniature or one painting. However, again, I like to exaggerate and dedicate a certain technique just for the painting of this miniature so that you see the effect at the end of the video that you could actually pull it off just by doing stippling. You could pull off nice skin painting and nice worn red robe painting. So what is stippling? Basically, I dedicated this video because this video was inspired from Duke, my friend Duke from Instagram and here at YouTube, because I saw one of his videos like a month ago where he explained stippling. And I think I have been unconsciously using stippling, the method of applying paint via the stippling method or technique, for a while now. But I wasn't conscious that it was called stippling. So stippling is basically applying the paint by the stippling like motion. It's like painting little dots of paint over the model. However, don't use the brush and like dart it towards a model because that will ruin the tip of your brush. Unless you're using like a cheap synthetic brush, well, I guess that's fine. But if you're using a Kolinsky brush, like what I do or what I use, I'd highly recommend, much like Duke, I highly recommend that you paint it sideways and you do those dots by pressing the side or and the tip of your Kolinsky brush. So you can see in the video here, we are technically layering, painting lighter colors on top of each other and painting lesser areas as the colors get lighter. However, we're applying the paint via stippling method or stippling motion. Now let's do more layering via stippling. Now we use beige red, which is a lighter, fleshier version of the reddish red from the Nocturna set. You could actually do blending without actually blending with the stippling method. You just need to mix a lot of colors or a lot of paint so that you have good color transitions. However, at this point of the video, I feel that glaring via stippling is a better option. By glaring, I mean we mix the paint with glaze medium, roughly around 2 parts paint or 3 parts paint and 1 part glaze medium. So we have a semi-transparent paint and then we apply that glaze paint via stippling. I think we will produce better transitions or softer transitions and it's a better option. But I'm kinda undecided on what to name that technique. Maybe glaze stippling. And I do feel it's a better option. It's a smoother option. I mean, you'll produce smoother transitions because you're stippling with transparent or semi-transparent paints. But do tell me at the comment section below if you think glaze stippling is a good name. Our skin is looking good at this point, but it's not actually the stippling that's making it look this good. I think it's the amount of colors or paints that we're using. That's why we're creating nice transitions. Also, our layering is kinda high contrast, meaning I paint less and less areas as I paint lighter colors. So we create a very high contrast look for the skin. However, the stippling is kinda giving a nice texture to the skin, which is perfect for this like zombie-like model. A few months ago, I saw a post of a guy, a miniature painter, at Facebook. He was justifying that wet blending is not working for him, glazing sucks, and that dry brushing is the best way to paint skin in his opinion, or at least that's the best way for him because he finds it easy. In my humble opinion, dry brushing is not a good way to paint skin. Even if you buy those fancy hobby dry brushing brushes, you won't really produce nice, smooth, or really good looking skin unless you want it to look like a wolf's skin, meaning it has tiny fur, because you certainly will create like texture with the brush, with the dry brushing, and it doesn't really fit the look of skin. So in my opinion, I think this stippling method is the easiest way to paint skin if you're not yet comfortable with glazing or glaring or painting with transparent paints or even with the airbrush. Oh, don't get me wrong, dry brushing is great. I do dry brushing a lot, especially for the underpainting or the shadow color. But I saw his posts and his photos, and I wasn't convinced that dry brushing is good for skin painting. Unless maybe you use dry brushing to create a nice genital and create quick volume with your model, like you could dry brush medium gray over the black primer and then white gray over the top areas of the model. And then after you've dry brushed the model, the skin of the model, then you could do glazes with skin tones like mix glaze medium with skin tone paints and then glaze it over the dry brush underpainting. And definitely the glaze paint will kind of soften like your dry brushing. Thus, I think that will work. But dry brushing alone for painting skin doesn't really work for me, in my opinion. And as I've said earlier, combining different techniques to produce the result you want is the best way to paint miniatures. Now back to the video. Now we're using white flesh as highlights of our skin. I basically thinned it the same way, around 3 parts paint and 1 part highlight sauce, just to like give it a retarding effect, because it's summer here in the Philippines and it's really hot and water will work but it dries really fast. Oh, by the way, I highly recommend that you slowly grow your highlight colors, your collection of highlight colors. Of course, you grow your collection of Vallejo highlight colors, but you could like buy slowly or grow them slowly, like buy ice yellow, ivory, sunny skin tone, deck tan, white flesh, and all those nice white colors or light colors like white gray, off white. Those are really helpful, and if you have a small collection of those colors, they're readily accessible and you'll always be using them, and they will last you a lifetime. For example, white gray is kind of bluish white and is very light, but it's not white. Also, off-white is a warm off-white color, which is also perfect for highlighting skin if you want a really shiny like skin look. So having those colors at hand will like speed up your painting, especially when you're highlighting already. And we all know that highlights are the life, and like it makes the miniatures look really good if it has good highlighting. Now we paint the highlights of the robe with Wern Red. Wern Red from the Vallejo Nocturna set is a very nice highlight color or pre-highlight color. It's very opaque and it's not squid pink or pink. It's like it has a fleshier look to it or a more organic look to it, and it's perfect for giving the red robe a worn, literally a worn, old, rugged look. To create to create better transition, I mix the worn red with the gory red a bit so that I have an intermediate color in between the worn red and gory red so that I have better transitions. But we're going for a high contrast look. Thus, we're painting less and less or smaller areas as we paint the lighter colors. Oh, by the way, going back to having a small collection or growing your collection of highlight colors, paints in general, or at least Vallejo, because I have more experience with Vallejo paints, they kind of darken as they dry. So white gray may seem very bright, or even worn red may seem very bright, but as the paint dries, you will notice that it kind of darkens and it kind of blends better with the previous color. That is the main reason why I highly recommend highlight colors, because it's kind of difficult to mix white with a certain base color to come up with a highlight color, and you can't do that consistently. So having a small collection of highlight colors is a must. Oh wait, let me rephrase that. Having a Vallejo highlight color collection is a must. Seriously though, the darkening of the paints as they dry, or at least the Vallejo paints as they dry, is the main reason why I'm painting the skin and the red robe at the same time, because while I'm painting the skin, the gory red has dried already, and while I'm painting the highlights of the gory red, I'm seeing the blending of the skin tones. A quick tip too is that if you're aiming for a higher level painting standard, higher than Golden Lemon, which I doubt that you're watching my video if you paint better than Golden Lemon standard, I highly recommend that you let your model cure overnight after you've painted all the highlights and stuff like that, because you'll see that all your highlights will kind of darken a little bit and you might need a bit of retouching on the next day if you want like brighter highlights. Now the next part is kinda a fail. I use red rose to further add highlights to the red robe, and I wasn't happy with the outcome. This is me trying to push the contrast or push the highlights of the red robe, and it's not looking good so far because the red rose is too bright. I should have stopped with the worn red. Oh, by the way, it's just me because I'm not a fan of putting highlights all over the model. As you can see, as we add more and more red rose to the red robe, it's kind of taking away the focus on the skin, especially on the face of the model. So I feel that if you want to really highlight, literally pun intended, to highlight like the skin and the face of the model, you should apply less and less highlights as you go away from the face of the model. However, you might ask, I did not edit out the red rose highlights or the highlighting of the red robe with the red rose paint because some people might like the look. Oh, by the way, you'll notice in the video that we're applying the highlights of the red robe via stippling because the stippling creates a nice texture even with the highlights. So I almost titled this video like stippling all the way because we are kind of stippling until the end of the video. Thus, you could see that at this point of painting the model, you could actually apply the paints via stippling. You could basically stipple anything and the model will look good. Painting edge highlights via stippling is a really good option if you're working or if you're aiming for a weathered look like this one, but it will not always work with every model. Like if you're painting armor, you can do stippling for the edge highlights, but it will look like cast iron and it will look very textured. But if you're aiming for that look, stippling edge highlights is a good option for you. As I've said, I don't like the very bright highlights on the red robe, thus we're glazing gory red all over the model. I could have used glaze medium, but I was in a hurry. I wanted to finish the model already, so I just watered down the gory red paint. Also, you'll see in the video that it is better to over highlight than to under highlight, because if you under highlight, you don't have enough contrast, but if you over highlight, you could always tone it down with glazes. Now I present to you the Golden Lemon standard painting of the skin and the red robe. Again, the best way to paint a miniature is to combine all of the techniques like wet blending a bit, and you could do glazes, you could do really good layering, do a bit of dry brushing, and combining all those techniques in one miniature is basically the best way to paint a mini. However, I hope that after watching the video and seeing the final result of the skin and the red robe, you realize that you could paint good models via stippling alone. That's it, Pansit. That's it, we're done. I hope you liked the video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and consider joining the channel so that you'll be part of our Discord community. Saludos!